Last time we looked at some of the primitive data types in Java and how to declare variables. Today we're going to dive deeper into the Boolean data type and more importantly its main use case, conditionals. But before we begin, I want to rename our project and the class from the last video to move it into a package, that's a new folder, and improve our project structure. On the left side of our project you can see a folder called .idea that's used by our IDE to store our project settings. The most important folder for us is SRC, short for source, because that's where our Java code lives. To create a new package inside this folder, we right-click on SRC, select New, and choose Package. Since we're still looking at data types, I'm going to call this package data types. The class our code from the last video is stored still has the name main, but this is unspecific, so we are going to rename it. But first we are going to move it in our just created package data types by drag and drop. As you can see at the top, our class is now stored inside the data types package. Let's rename our class by right-clicking on the class and write our new name. As another option, you could also just change the name inside the class. Since we now discuss another topic in this video, I'm going to create a new class inside our data types package with right-clicking on it and select new and then Java class and choose the name of our choice. This video is about the data type Boolean and conditionals, therefore I'm going to name it like this. Now we're good to go. As a bonus, from now on all the code snippets and slides will be available in a GitHub repository. You'll find the link in the description and in the pinned comment below. Okay, let's get started. As in the last video mentioned, Boolean is a primitive data type which only can be true or false. To print this, we first need our main method by typing main and press enter. And then we can create a print statement by typing sout and pressing enter. Let's extract our Boolean value in a new variable called isAdult. And just like in math, we can perform comparisons which return a Boolean result. For example, the result of a comparison with a variable age, like age is greater or equal than 18. This checks if the value stored in age is greater or equal than 18. Let's test this with some values for age. Comparisons like this we almost need in every program. Let's look at some other comparison operators you'll often use. And I'll just remove the variable isAdult and move the comparison directly inside the print statement. Comparison operators are used to compare two values. The result of a comparison is always a Boolean, either true or false. First we have equal to. This checks if two values are exactly the same. Remember that only one equal sign is used to assign a value to something. And to compare two values, if they are the same, we use the double equal sign. Then there is the not equal sign with an exclamation mark followed by an equal sign. This operator checks if two values are different. It returns true if they are different and false if they are the same. Then we have the greater than, which checks if the value on the left is strictly greater than the value on the right. Then we have less than, which checks if the value on the left is strictly smaller than the value on the right. And then we got greater than or equal or less than or equal, but you all know this from math. So just keep in mind that all of these comparison operators return a Boolean result which is either true or false. Now let's talk about logical operators. Sometimes we need to combine multiple conditions. That's where logical operators come in. Logical operators are used to combine multiple Boolean expressions and they help us create more complex conditions. For example, we have a logical AND. Both conditions must be true for the whole expression to be true. So the expression I just wrote right down here is true if as money is true and is store open is true. Then we have a logical OR. In this one, at least one condition must be true for the whole expression to be true. So this expression is false if both of them are false. And then there's logical not, which reverses the Boolean value, but I've shown this in the last video. And these logical operators are super important for our next topic, which is if statements. If statements are one of the most important control structures in Java. They allow your program to execute certain blocks of code only if a specific condition is true. And sometimes you don't just want to check if one condition is true, but you also want to run some alternative code if the condition is false. And that's where if else comes in. Now let's see how to use Booleans in conditional statements. Here are some examples. We can extract the comparison of age in a Boolean variable. The convention is that most Boolean values start with is, like is adult. A common mistake is writing if isAdult equals true. Since isAdult is already a Boolean, just write if isAdult. Sometimes you want to check more than two options. That's when if else comes into play. The program checks the conditions from top to bottom and only executes the first one that is true. If you have many possible values for one variable, a switch case can make your code cleaner and easier to read. With switch, you check the value of a variable and run different blocks of code depending on the case. In a switch statement, each case needs a break to stop the code from running into the next case. Without break, Java will continue executing all the following cases even if they don't match. The default case runs if none of the other cases match. Before we wrap up, let's avoid some common mistakes. Comparing Booleans unnecessarily is a common mistake. Also, don't forget your braces if you use if, for example, and use descriptive variable names, for example, user is logged in, etc. Now you know how to use Booleans, comparisons, and conditionals in Java. Check out the code in the GitHub repo in the description or comments. If you found this helpful, leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Thanks for watching.